What's up, everybody? Wife's favorite sports show. We are recapping the college football rankings, the playoff rankings that came out earlier tonight, and we pretty much nailed it. Uh, had a little bit of a mix-up at 3 and 4, but other than that, 1 through 6, we got all the teams right. They were all in there, and then the three teams I told you guys to watch for were 7, 8, and 9. So we pretty much nailed it on all accounts there. Let's just go right down the list. Number one at Alabama, of course. Who didn't see that one coming? Alabama is a unit this year. They are absolutely crushing teams. They play LSU on this Saturday in Baton Rouge. That should be far and away their biggest test. Still don't think LSU has enough firepower on offense to keep up with Alabama. As crazy as that sounds, Alabama's never been one of those teams where you've had to get into a shootout with them. It's been more about defense, but this year they have Tua, insane offensive line, great running game, wide receivers. Really, I don't see any holes in their game. It's until I see them legitimately tested by a team. Could happen this weekend, probably not. I don't think they're going to lose again for the rest of the season. Beyond that, who knows? But this season, if you're an Alabama hater, present, not going to be a fun year for you. Alabama has way too much firepower on offense. They are loaded, surprisingly, yet unsurprisingly loaded on defense. Lost a lot of talent, but Nick Saban and that crew just continues to add to the list of fantastic defensive players. I don't know what they're doing down there, but they seem to have it all figured out in Tuscaloosa. So Alabama, clear, far and away number one. Best team in college football. There's only one other team that I think can legitimately give them any sort of trouble and can keep up with them from an offensive perspective. That's the number 2 team. We predicted it. Clemson, one of the other undefeateds from a Power 5 conference. Good strength of schedule, not great. But they've just been utterly demolishing teams this year. It hasn't been close with the exception of that Syracuse game, as we mentioned before. Third string quarterback goes in because you lose Trevor Lawrence to a concussion, and he and that running back Etienne, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's a monster. Third string quarterback. They still go out and win that game against a very good Syracuse team. Number 3, now here's where we got it a little wrong. The committee puts LSU at number 3. I put Notre Dame at number 3. Stupid on my part, because as we've seen over the past several years since the committee started making these selections in 2014, they put a huge emphasis on strength of schedule. UCF. Huge emphasis on strength of schedule. Again, UCF. We'll get to you guys in a minute, but Notre Dame's strength of schedule, it hasn't been bad per se. They really haven't played a lot of great teams. They've had a couple close calls with just absolutely abysmal teams. Pitt, they almost lost to Pitt. Vanderbilt is a respectable college football outfit, but really nothing that Notre Dame shouldn't be able to handle, especially at home. LSU, on the other hand, has played one of the toughest schedules I can think of in recent memory. You open the season in a neutral field, neutral site game against a team like Miami, where now Miami probably isn't who we thought they were. Dennis Green, rest in peace. But you go out there and you beat the brakes off a top 10 team, preseason team in Texas. Then you come back a few weeks later and you beat an Auburn team in Auburn, in Jordan-Hare Stadium, which is not the easiest of places to play. Ask Alabama. That's a tough one. Mississippi State just throttled them at the line of scrimmage, made Nick Fitzgerald, their quarterback, look like he was still in junior high. Georgia beat the brakes off of Georgia, who is themselves a top 6 team. They're right in the mix for the college football playoff. So that strength of schedule and that strength of record, plus their one loss is very impressive. They lost on the road, one possession in the swamp to the Florida Gators. Uh, so I totally understand why they put LSU at 3. I think part of my hesitancy was the fact that LSU's going to be welcoming in one of the best teams in recent memory to Baton Rouge. I don't think they have what it takes to win it. That obviously shouldn't have played into or factored into where I ranked them this week. We're going solely off of their resume up to this point, and I do think that they've definitely earned that number 3 spot. I put them at number 4. I put Notre Dame at number 3 because of the undefeated record, and had LSU. I flip-flopped, but eventually I ended up going with Notre Dame at number 3. LSU at number 4. Michigan at 5. Got that one right, too. Michigan's defense is probably one of the most impressive units in all of college football, on the defensive side of the ball, that is. I mean, you have Alabama, who has a very, very good defense, and then other than that, LSU, and then probably Michigan. And surprisingly, I'd put Kentucky in that list. Now, they haven't played a lot of offensive juggernauts, but everybody that they've played, they've really stifled them. I mean, they held Mississippi State to 7 points, Florida to 16 points. Those aren't outrageous offensive numbers, but to hold two of those teams to those point totals, and they took Texas A&M to overtime, held Missouri to 13 points, I believe it was. They're doing a good job. Kentucky is holding their own. They're punching. They're right up there with the best of them. But Michigan's defense, far and away, one of the best defenses in college football. Their offense is run-oriented with Higdon, and of course, to a lesser extent, Shea Patterson. He can run the ball very well. He can, when his number's called, he can get it done. Their quarterback. They have a quality loss on the road to Notre Dame. Obviously, we talked about this. Big wins over Michigan State and Wisconsin. They play Penn State this weekend, who's a top 15 team in Happy Valley. That should be a true test for them. And then, of course, they have Ohio State at the end of the season. Number 6, Georgia. Called it again. They have one loss. It's on the road to a top 3 LSU team. Great bounce-back game against Florida. Run game is sound. Jake Fromm, you're going to live and die by Jake Fromm this year if you're a Georgia fan. He can either be your best friend or your worst nightmare on any given Saturday. He was your worst nightmare against LSU. He tore Florida's secondary apart. Granted, they were down 2 starting cornerbacks, but hey, you take it how it comes, I guess. Next man up. But yeah, Georgia has been largely impressive this year, with the exception of that egg they laid in at LSU. But as we all know, LSU is a great football team. And then the 3 teams I told you guys to watch out for: Oklahoma, Kentucky, Washington State. That they're right there. I mean, did we call it or what? Oklahoma still has a path to the college football playoff. They need a few things to go their way, as we discussed in the video last week. Or yesterday. Washington State has a little bit more of an outside shot than Oklahoma. The committee's kind of down on the Pac-12 a little bit, but what can you do? If they win the rest of their games and a few things happen in front of them, the sky is the limit for them. They could potentially go to the college football playoff. And then, of course, Kentucky, their shot is an outside shot just based on who they still have to play. They play Georgia, and then if they win that game, they probably go on and play Alabama. I don't see it happening. I don't see a scenario where they beat both of those teams. But, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that Kentucky was a top 10 team and 7-1 going into their game with Georgia with a shot at the SEC title, or the SEC East division title on the line, I don't know. I probably would have thought you were crazy. So here's to Kentucky proving me wrong once again. So yeah, those three teams that I told you guys to keep an eye on, they are still firmly in this. Obviously, they need some things to go their way, but there are scenarios out there. It's mathematically possible for them to still reach the college football playoff. One team that it is not mathematically possible for them to reach the playoffs, I mean, unless absolute chaos on a catastrophic scale that we have never seen before in this sport happens, that's UCF. And there's a bunch of different reasons why UCF is not going to make the playoff this year, even if they end up going undefeated. And the biggest one is strength of schedule. Guys, you can't sit there and pound your chest about being an undefeated football team when you are playing it depends on what it is this week. It was 126th in the country strength of schedule. There's only about 130 teams in Division 1A football, or what we call FBS now. Cincinnati is no longer undefeated. USF is no longer undefeated. And if I'm not mistaken, I haven't taken a look at their schedule this year, but if I'm not mistaken, they don't play Houston, who is the one other AAC team that is in fact ranked this year. So your strength of schedule actually got worse. And I know UCF fans love to use the transitive property. Oh, well, last year we beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. Auburn beat Georgia and Alabama, who were in the college football final. That's great. But if you take a look at the motivation factors from Auburn, they're thinking 1 week SEC championship, the next week, we got to go play, UCF in the Peach Bowl. UCF is here in terms of motivation. Auburn's way down here in terms of motivation. And as we've seen this year, Auburn not very good. And if you guys want to use the transitive property, you almost lost to Memphis. Took a huge second half comeback to beat Memphis on the road in the rain. I get it. But Memphis is not a great team. And then Missouri, who hasn't won a game in the SEC all year, goes out and knocks the ever-living crap out of Memphis. I think they hung like 62 or 63 points on them or something like that. So really, I mean, if you want to use the transitive property, shouldn't Missouri be national champions? Because UCF is the undefeated national champion, and they almost lost to Memphis, and then Memphis goes out and gets bullied by Missouri, and then Missouri loses to Kentucky. So really, Kentucky should be a national champion. Food for thought. But all kidding aside, it's not happening this year. Just be proud of where your team is right now. They are firmly in the conversation, if you will. They're, they're what, 12th? Yeah. So probably going to go to, definitely if you guys went out, New Year's Six Bowl for sure. Just be cool with it. Back-to-back New Year's Six Bowls. That's a lot. And, maybe someday teams will start to take notice and you guys can work out a schedule or something, play a big-time Power 5 team. But for the time being, you got to let this whole we're being disrespected by the national, the college football selection committee, you guys got to let that go. We'll see what happens this weekend. Obviously, one of these teams in the top four will be out because Alabama and LSU play each other. However, if Alabama loses a close one in LSU, don't be surprised if it's Clemson, LSU, Notre Dame, Alabama. Don't be surprised if that's your top four. But, I'm almost certain LSU is probably going to lose, probably by double digits. So and if Michigan wins, look for them to slide into that number 4 spot. Potentially they could jump Notre Dame because who knows? Obviously the committee values strength of schedule a lot more than most other things. And then Georgia plays Kentucky. There's a lot of stuff. It's going to be moving day after Saturday. So just keep your eyes peeled on the TV all Saturday. We have a great schedule coming up this weekend. And yeah, hopefully it doesn't disappoint. Thanks for watching. This has been your wife's favorite sports show, the college football playoff rankings update, if you will. If you guys like what you saw, like the video down below. Subscribe to our channel. Like us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the whole nine. This has been Austin, and I will see you guys in a few days.